hello everyone. Welcome back to CCW-TV, the video show where a comic book writer and a comic book vendor talk about comics. I'm Elliot Serrano, and this is Jose Melendez coming to you from Dreamline Comics in Schaumburg, Illinois. If you've never watched our show before, we are two guys with a lot of opinions about comics that we share, and we invite you to share yours as well. Last week, we had a lot of discussion going on our video channel, as well as on our blog, about something that had nothing to do with a book we reviewed. Just check it out. Check out the Buffy, written by Brad Meltzer review, and you're going to see a whole lot of discussion being made about kind of a extraneous comment I made. The, identity crisis and how a lot of people didn't like it. And a recent commenter even said that they loved Identity Crisis, and this was the first time that anyone had ever said anything bad about it. So, I don't want to get too much into that, except to say that I appreciate that all of you out there, as you were discussing it, were very respectful of each other on it. So, but always be sure to check out our blogs, where a lot of the conversation that starts here on the video channel continues over there, and we can keep things much more timely. But beyond that, was kind of a non-eventful week. There are a couple things that we'll get into in Last Rants in regards to the changes going on at DC Comics. But without further ado, let's hit some reviews, because we've been getting comments that we talk too much Marvel and too much DC. Are you people watching? Apparently not. All right, so the first one, we want to give a shout-out real quick to BleedingCool.com's Rich Johnston. He has a book that just came out from Image called Chase Variant. Chase Variant is, it's Rich playing with all the little gimmickry that goes on in comic book promotions. He wrote this little anthology book, with little 4 to 6 page stories done by different writers about this assassin called Chase, who she's got 4 arms, carries 4 guns.
Well, she's an assassin.
And it's a funny little thing, but in essence, what it is the life of a character in a collectible card game. So as the game is being played out, you see what is actually happening to her. And, it's a clever little book. Is it incredibly groundbreaking? Is it the greatest thing since sliced bread? Not really. But if you have a friend who's into collectible card games...
Well, neither was Ash Saves Obama, so...
No, it wasn't. If anything, it was... No. Yes. But, If anything, if you have a friend who's into collectible card games, this might be a way to turn them on to comic books. And it's pretty straightforward, one and done. And there are a couple jokes in there that are pretty clever. But it made me flash on that Onion article from a while back about the video game character that wonders why God won't let its suffering end. That every time it dies, God keeps pushing continue and his torment continues. So Rich... I liked it, but I even you weren't like rewriting any rule books or anything with it. So, but it's still fun. Now, a book that does really rewrite the rules when it comes to comics is Joe the Barbarian from Grant Morrison and Sean Murphy, where Grant Morrison introduces us to a kid who. I say Chase Variant reminds me of that Onion article. Joe the Barbarian reminded me a little bit about Calvin and Hobbes. Because, because Joe is a kid who escapes into this fantasy world that's populated by characters made up of all the toys in his home.
Well, he doesn't really escape to it as much as he's kind of thrown into it.
It's kind of thrown into it. And the first issue was debuted last month. It was only $1 if you wanted to buy it. And, some people might have picked it up and felt a little bit underwhelmed by it, if anything, because the dialogue was so sparse.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't take you a long time to just really read the book.
Or Sean Murphy did all of the heavy lifting in the first issue. No,
Sean Murphy did some major heavy lifting here because, if anything, he had the unenviable task of setting up the whole world. And if you even read in the back when Sean Murphy talks about what did Grant Morrison ask of him in the script, there are a lot of details in this book that Sean Murphy did on his own. That Grant said, well, whatever you want to do, just do it. And he did. Like, first, he makes just some incredible renderings here. And this is one of those books where if Sean Murphy is not being considered, for an Eisner, when it's time to start talking about Eisners, really, they should throw the award out. Because this is just an incredibly lush and well-rendered book.
Well, it sets up, Sean Murphy actually sets up the world that Joe is in, and he does. It's a pretty big world. It's a very detailed world, but it's very lonely.
Incredibly lonely.
He does a great job of showing how alone this boy is. His father died in the first Gulf War. He lives with his mom. Their house is being foreclosed on because they don't have any money or enough money to be able to pay the mortgage on the house because of the father passing away. And he's pretty much an introvert. He's an artist. Mm-hmm. Spends a lot of time by himself, and Sean Murphy does a beautiful job of showing how utterly alone this kid is.
What really impressed me about this is because there are times when you're afraid. I mean, especially when you get into the setup in the beginning. Yeah, Joe is an introspective, introverted kid. He kind of sets himself apart. And they're like these scenes with some bullies who are picking on him. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of afraid there in the beginning that Grant Morrison was going to get too much into the cliches, of the whole thing. But no, it's done really well. And when you really get into this kid's world too,
I would even go as far as say this is a complete antithesis of what Kick-Ass was.
Oh, way.
With the lone kid and getting picked on, completely.
Yes, this is
different.
The opposite, the other different other side of the spectrum for Kick-Ass. Because with this kid...
This feels more real than what that book was supposed to be. That book was supposed to be real. Kick-Ass was touted as being like a real superhero story in a real world.
It's funny you should mention that because
And this feels 100 times more real than any part of Kick-Ass.
A commenter, because there was after our last Kick-Ass review, at the conclusion of Kick-Ass... there was a whole bit about, Hit Girl, taking that snorting whatever that gives her the cocaine. It was supposed to be cocaine.
Right, which I guess they set up a couple issues ago. But, when we reviewed it, we didn't know what it was, and I completely forgot about it because, it was 4 months before the last issue came out, and that's not really a book that I keep rereading over and over again.
And I'm also going to say that if you really think that a hit of cocaine is going to give a 10-year-old girl the strength of 10 men, you do not know what cocaine does to the human body. But Johnny Harr had the best quote about that. Johnny Harr said, well, because I said cocaine is not going to affect a 10-year-old kid that way. He responded, well, Elliot, I'll have you know that when I'm drunk, I have the strength of 10-year-old girls. So
that's actually pretty good. I didn't see that.
That's pretty good. So anyway, not to get into Kick-Ass land because this book is again far superior to that.
Yes.
The first issue, yes, sets up the world. Sean Murphy has to do the heavy lifting, and it's incredibly detailed and beautiful. Yes, there's very little dialogue, but that's because you really should be sitting there and just taking in that art, pouring over those pages.
Exactly. And what the dialogue does do is it sets up why Joe is suddenly in this world at the end.
Right.
It's very subtly hinted at that he's diabetic.
Right. And it's hinted even when you jump into issue number 2, where things really start picking up, and man, Sean Murphy has to take it to another level. Mm-hmm. Because not only does he have this incredible world that he has to portray, but he actually has to start doing action scenes. And it is the rare, oh so rare talent that you have an artist that is really, again, does superb real life renderings as he's doing here, but is also able to just bring out, these wide epic scale battles that are going on. And there's this bit where Joe's rat becomes a big hero in the story, and it's just this wonderful. I mean, this is when, to me, it really becomes Calvin and Hobbes, because, you know, his rat becomes his companion and his protector, and there are all these things going on in the story. And I don't want to spoil anything, except just to say that, wow, you know, when you read a book like this, it's like every time I see, like, a new Pixar movie and I walk away going, I wish more movies were done that well. When I read a comic book like this, I'm going, wow, I wish more comic books were done this well. You know, I know that Sean Murphy really poured his heart and soul into this book, and it probably was an arduous process for him. But God, did he not make this look easy? You know, you read this and you're going, oh, good. This, how could it get any better than this?
Yeah, and we've talked about Grant Morrison before. Grant Morrison, to me, is very, very hit or miss.
Yeah.
When he hits, it's good for me, but, man, the misses are just terrible for me.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about it. And this book has some of those trippy, well, literally some of the trippy qualities that Grant Morrison has. But at the same time, which I'm kind of surprised that he gave it away already, is that he's switching. Sean Murphy's art and some of the story is switching off between the fantasy world
and the real
world about what's really going on.
Right.
And I'm actually surprised that he did that so soon, that he's already letting you know that, well, this is taking place in his mind right now, and he's kind of freaking out because he knows that he's kind of, he even says, why am I hallucinating? Why am I doing this? He has to get some sugar into his blood system. He needs to go down and get some soda. But I'm also now wondering, because they gave away that he is hallucinating, that there's something else. There's something else already there. So he got rid of that already, second issue. So there has to be another level that Morrison is going to take this to that we're not going to expect.
Because you don't need it to go to another level, but yeah, I really do believe that he's got another trick up his sleeve. Yeah. And that I think too, that helps, because you're right. Morrison does get kind of trippy, and the trippier he gets, the more inaccessible the stories become. Yes. So what he's doing is, while all this is going on in Joe's head, you know, Morrison is keeping the perspective. This is how it's happening and why it's happening, and it's keeping the story accessible. So when it's getting trippy, you know, okay, why? Oh, okay, now I understand that. So I just have to say again, I don't know how much attention this book has been getting with all the other big events that are going on in comics, even with Blackest Night going on in DC. Do not let this book fly under your radar.
It's only going to be an 8-issue miniseries. Don't trade weight on this. You really want to read this right now.
This is an event that you really... I mean, this is a book that you want to be in on as it's happening, because there's some really special stuff going on.
And if you haven't read it, hopefully you will be getting, because we'll come back to this probably at the halfway point, and we'll talk about it then. Then you guys can tell us what you think about it. So.
Especially. So, that's what we have. You know, Rich, good job, mate. Or what? What did the Brits say to each other? Cheerio. And don't miss Joe the Barbarian. When we come back, we're going to look at another book that from Marvel, which with all the stuff that's going on at Marvel, runs the risk of also being overlooked, and it would be undeservedly so. We hope you join us then.